going to go in a little different direction now. Now, I've been kind of leading you up to this, but we're going to launch into the concepts of which lifetime is it anyway? You can come on. And this is a book that I wrote. Actually, I experienced it in 94 and 95, and I actually wrote the book in 2005. But this was the first time I ever experienced what I came to call a multidimensional bleed-through. And just by reading the front of this book, you're going to get an idea of what this is. Now, I realize I may lose some of you as I go on this journey, but for those of you who have found yourself in a similar situation, I just want you to be aware of the fact that you're not crazy and that there is a way to heal this. And the first experience I had, which I'm going to read to you, really was disruptive to me. But I had the tools and the skills to deal with it, and it made all the difference in the world. So this is what it reads. Have you ever responded to a current experience in an overly reactive way, yet felt that something in that experience was authentic and true? If so, you may have had a multidimensional bleed-through. Listen and trust what you hear. The voice of your soul will direct you to the time and place where healing can begin. And that's where we're going to begin today, is I am going to read to you my first experience with a multidimensional bleed-through, which came unsolicited. Now, there were times when I went into past lives searching for the origin, but this was something that I was not asking for. I was in Washington, D.C. I was completing a year's tour. I had purchased an RV and had traveled around the country offering workshops. And this was my last workshop. I was in Washington, D.C. I was exhausted. I had gone through a loss of my pet who had accompanied me on this journey, and I was despairing. But I pulled off the last workshops, and this was the last night. And it was in the very 1st of October, and for whatever reason it was really cold that night, and they did not have their system in this Best Western to turn the heat on, and so it was very cold. And so I ran a hot bath in an attempt to get warm, and this is the experience that came forth. It's entitled Past and Present Collide, and it introduces you to the second section of this book called Antoinette's Story. Antoinette's story is the healing that took place between the soul of my father and myself. And it was introduced to me by Dad's guardian angel, who I came to call Chief. Over the next maybe 10 days, I'm going to bring forth to you the 10 teachings that Chief instructed me in that are all contained in this book. But this is how it all began. Some of you may relate. Now, this can be a little bit difficult to hear, so I just invite you to experience it in whatever way is in your best interest to experience it. It is 4 in the morning. I am restless. I cannot sleep. I can't get warm. I run a hot bath and sink deep into the fluid comforter of warmth. Still, I am chilled to the bone. Suddenly and involuntarily, my body begins to rock. It is as if I am remembering something of which I have no conscious awareness. I begin to weep, then whimper, whimpering and rocking back and forth, holding myself, attempting to comfort myself in the midst of this unidentified despair. My eyes naturally close. An image appears in my inner eye. I am still me, but I am a different me. I am still in a tub of water, but it is in another time and in an unfamiliar place. I hear myself speak. I am sorry. I can't do it this time. I know I promised, but I don't know how to cope with this despair. I don't know how to proceed. I can't get away from this grief. I cannot fulfill my contract. Please let me come home. I just cannot bear this despair. Without a clue as to whom I addressed, I continued to ask for forgiveness, to be set free. My arms float freely in the water. I feel the sensation of blood dripping from wrists which have been recently slit. My body goes limp in a liquid light, and I slowly steal my last breath as I sink deeply into the welcoming arms of death. Half expecting to see red fluid seeping into the water, I cautiously opened my eyes. The water was clear. It was 1995. I was in a bathtub in Washington, D.C. I was not suicidal. Blood was not flowing from cut veins. I was caught between two dimensions of time. Suicide is not an option for me in this life. I am too metaphysically oriented to believe it would relieve me of my pain. I was witnessing a scene from my soul's past when this was not the case. A scene in which the despair had been so engulfing that my personality experienced no other choice. In my mind's eye, the blood was real, as was the peace I experienced when I ultimately succumbed to death. Inspired to continue, I again closed my eyes. The spirit escaped from this withered, lifeless body. It hovers above, suspended in time, waiting for someone to come and escort it to the light. And so I went. I took a deep breath and jumped into this piece of work with both feet. I took flight into another dimension of time to rescue a wounded part of my past. I had time traveled many times before, back into this childhood, to memories which were buried in fact and reality. However, this time I was traveling back into a scene of a fragment of my soul from another life lived in another dimension of time. I am planted back into that bathroom where the woman in my mind's eye has just taken her own life. I stand looking at this lifeless body. Her spirit, which has risen above it, catches my eye. I introduce myself as her future self, and I ask her what her name is. She says they call her Antoinette. In a faint whisper, she asks if I have come to help. There is a quiet desperation in her inquiry. I nod my head yes, and I assure her she is now safe. I promise to do what I can to help her free herself enough to go home. I can't tell you how unnerving that experience was, and if I did not have all of the psychological background and the experience to walk myself through that, I believe I would have ended up somewhere in the back ward of some psychological, psychic ward, and I probably would have been put on Thorazine or Haldol or something to quiet my hallucinations. But they weren't hallucinations, they were past life memories, and I was able to bridge past and present, and I was able to heal that. And this book, Which Lifetime Is This Anyway, gives you a 10-step formula to do the same. I'm going to introduce you to some of the teachings that helped me along the way. This book, if you're interested in purchasing it, can be purchased on my website, or it'll take you to Amazon.com and you can order it.